Their outfits, you know, they were using some orange conduit cable.
Yeah, the one where you put like cables for electricity and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
exactly.
So, you know, they just hacked their costume.
They're geeks.
All right. So I think we should announce some more winners, Dave.
Okay.
Before we hit our session this afternoon.
All right, so these are for the Brain Gain Network t-shirts, which you can claim outside.
This is once again for the Brain Gain Network t-shirts. That's bgn.org. You can claim with Meg outside.
All right. So again, apologies for mispronunciation of names.
We will try our very best. This is hard, man.
I know.
I'm doing this?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay. Dalarach Polot or Dalarach Polot.
Jerson Boston.
Ronil Rufo.
Jewel Ann Delgado.
David Elephant.
John Naranjo.
Heinz Militar.
Nielsen Navarrete.
Justin Alec Cordova.
Irvin Jimenez.
Or Irvin Jimenez.
Alan Manuel.
Keith Perry.
Charmaine Zija. Yape.
Or Yape. And last but not the least for this set, Mancio Jan Ruben Basok or Basok. Thank you. You just won yourself a bgn.org t-shirt that you can claim outside now or later after the sessions.
That's right. It's a great t-shirt. Thank you, Brain Gain Network. If you haven't registered on their website, we highly recommend that you do so. It's a great resource for connecting with other like-minded entrepreneurs in the Philippines.
So, who here has heard of Amazon Web Services?
Who's built an application on Amazon Web Services or AWS? That's awesome.
How about who has not heard of Amazon Web Services?
Oh, there were a few hands there.
Now is the time you will hear about Amazon Web Services because our next speaker,
we found him.
We found him. He finally made it. Is none other than Franco Aisma. He is responsible for Amazon's sales, channels, and marketing activities in the Philippines. He engages with various organizations locally and in the region from technology startups to MNCs, helping them drive innovation and build IT-based services using the cloud. Franco has a background in product development, engineering, design, and technology innovation. With over 12 years of experience in the tech industry, his expertise covers IT infrastructure, network, communication, automation, cloud computing, and sales management. He has a Master of Science degree from the National University of Singapore and is an electrical engineer by training. He lives in Singapore and spends time hiking, reading while babysitting, and traveling to hidden gems in Asia. Do you guys know he's a Filipino? Are you Filipino? He is a Filipino. Put your hands together for Franco Aisma.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Franco. Now, I'll make one announcement before we turn it over to Franco. We're having a special seminar with AWS later this afternoon.
That is correct. So 5:30. I'll tell you more about exactly what that workshop is after the end of my presentation.
That's great. Now, there's a really big giveaway that you guys are giving to the attendees of Geeks on a Beach. Tell me more about that.
Exactly. So if you guys are registered for that workshop, you guys will get $1,000 credits.
$1,000 credits?
1,000 USD credits so that you could run your applications. And that may not sound a lot, but after my talk, you'd realize how long you could run your startups with that one.
That's awesome. Thank you, Franco.
Yep. Thank
Enjoy.
you so much. So guys, good afternoon to everyone. How are you guys doing? Yeah? I love this place. I'm doing well. The weather is fantastic today, and I'm pretty sure that Tina needs to lock down the doors because I know you guys are going to try and sneak out. Yeah? It's a beautiful day. So my name is Franco Aisma. I am with Amazon Web Services. The work that I do for Amazon is to help customers. In fact, that's a spectrum of customers, ranging from your multinational companies to enterprises, to your corporate startups, and your technology startups, which is my favorite. I work with these organizations and groups so that they could leverage the cloud when they deploy new services, validate ideas, new business models. The work that I do with them sometimes expands to existing systems that they may have. We try to see if it makes sense to move that into the cloud. What is exciting about my work is that I get to meet with the coolest corporate startups in the region, and I get to work with the brightest technology co-founders, founders out there in the region as well. And the common thread across these two seemingly different organizations is that they're all trying to validate an idea. They're all trying to launch a business. They're all trying to create services for their users. And the common thread across that is the cloud. So today I'd like to share with you some of our perspectives specifically on the startup side. And by definition, it's not just your startups from a garage, but sometimes you're part of a team within a bigger company that is trying to deploy a new service for your customers. And in very much a lot of sense, you act like a startup. So I like this slide, if it works, hold on. There you go. I like this slide in this picture. I think to your right, you would recognize that figure. That is Jeff Bezos, our CEO and founder of Amazon.com. But I like what he puts out there and says that the most transformative and radical of inventions is the one that allows others to unleash their creativity. And if we look at the things that we do and use every day and consume, we sometimes often miss out on some of these creativities that have been unleashed over the past few years. So what if we can reinvent the way that we access our favorite music? Wait a minute, I think that's out. That's called Spotify, for example. And, sorry, I need to get this working. How about if we could reinvent the way that we read magazines on the go? Well, wait a minute, I think that application is actually out. That is something that we call Flipboard. Yeah? And how about if we can reinvent the way that we do couch surfing, for example? I think we have that now. We call that Airbnb. Those are amazing services that were not around many years back. But if we think a little bit bigger, dream a little bit bigger, how about if we can reinvent the way that we actually explore planets? That would be interesting. Well, wait a minute. We have that as well. It's called the Mars rover. So from a very different vantage point, Professor Steve Blanks kind of mentions the same, that AWS in the cloud is enabling this new generation of mobile applications and softwares. And it's quite interesting that a lot of the startups that we kind of mention sometimes are very US-centric, but a lot of the startups here in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, like Pero Hero, Vicky in Southeast Asia, and Singapore, MiG-33 MOL, are no longer bounded by where they are as a startup. And I think that's interesting. The playing field has been leveled, and they have access to the same resources. And that is why we're all here, right? We're all here to build that community, to support the startups, to build that double-sided market of the technology piece of it and the investor piece of it. And I like this quote from Eric Ries as well, saying that the cloud facilitates or acts like a fertilizer to create more startups. And perhaps to understand a little bit of what Eric might be alluding to, we need to look at the life cycle of a startup. So more often, if you are part of a team, a product development team, new in a corporate world, you can consider yourself as a startup. If you're part of a small team that's launching a service, that is a startup. And probably you go through this phase where you have an idea, and from that idea, you try to distill it into a minimum viable set of features that you test against. And we call that a minimum viable product. And then after that, you go and kind of try to figure out, is my business model scalable? Is this something that, that customers are actually using? Are they paying for it? So there are different challenges in the different phases of a startup, depending on where they are. And I think that we enable and help startups across this life cycle. For the interest of time, I'm going to focus on the first phase, which is the idea generation to building a minimum viable product on AWS. And it is quite interesting if you look at this. How do you get a minimum viable product in the cloud, and how quickly does that allow you to do it? And in the traditional world that I come from, product development for oil and gas, before we come up what we call a minimum viable product, we'd have spent $20 million on capital expenditures to build hardware and stuff. That is for a market that is well defined. That is for a market that we know exactly what the pain points are, and we know exactly what the customers are going to pay for. But in the real world that we operate in as startups and organizations that has to do with technology, a lot of that is not exactly known. We somewhat know the problem. We don't know precisely exactly what we're trying to solve. Even worse, we don't exactly know who our target audience is when we first launch. We have an idea, and we need to validate that. And I think for a lot of startups, the key is to learn and adapt. And we've come up with a term for this, and you guys know this. This is called pivoting. And focusing on a simple idea and distilling that to a feature set, a very basic service, and iterating from there is very, very important for us in this industry. So in my world, where we have development for the oil and gas space, probably this does not apply. So what is the smallest thing that you can do to test your ideas if you are doing a startup or part of a startup group? Well, I don't think it looks anything close to this, right? This has a lot of risk, a lot of upfront commitment to test an idea. Most of you probably would recognize this as the prototype of a mouse. It's not pretty. I don't think it comes with laser. I don't even know how many DPIs or whatever resolution this thing can provide you. But it does one crucial thing. It validates the idea that people would use an interface that is going to be called the mouse. And I think that's a message for a lot of us. And apparently the ability to lower down the cost of failure is very, very key for us to innovate faster, because it allows us to try out multiple options, multiple permutations of options, in fact, of what actually would work. So where we help you is in terms of failing forward and failing faster and failing cheaper. And let's take some examples of this. In my world, the product development cycle is very linear. We know exactly what we want to come up with. But in the real world, it probably looks something like this, where you start off with a very simple dev test environment. You come up with an alpha launch with a selected group of customer, gather feedback, beta, and maybe MVP. So let's take some examples of companies that you may or may not know. Who knows a company called Bourbon? Bourbon's, oh, there's a few hands, fantastic. So they started out as a location-based mobile application, and they happened to have this feature that's really cool. You can share photographs. Guess what happened when they refined on that feature? They became Instagram, right? Another example is a company called Audio. It actually started as a site where people could create and share podcasts, but they had this neat little feature that allows users of the service to communicate with each other. They found out that users were using that more than they actually doing the podcast. You know, they failed forward faster, and they iterated or pivoted, and they became known as Twitter. Another example, we're probably all familiar with this game, Angry Birds. But do we know that Rovio had 51 games before Angry Birds that were not as successful? So the key message here is really adapt, iterate, launch a product in a very simple way, and listen to your customers. And I like this quote from one of the co-founders of Twitter, Biz Stone. He said that working hard for the past 10 years and focusing on ideas makes you look like an overnight success for people who did not see what happened behind the curtains. So let's take an example. If you are currently part of a team of developers of a small group of corporate startup or a garage-based startup, and you're trying to develop a mobile application, what should be your first steps? Well, you really don't have a lot of cash. You want to test out an idea if that works. How do you go about that? That is exactly where we would like to help you guys. So maybe what you want to do is create a dev test environment. A dev test environment to put your code in, try to see if that works. And kind of, it would look something like this. You would have a DNS service, you know, a balancer, and a very small server backend and a database. Well, in our world, if you open an account on a free tier, this actually costs you $0. And that's as little risk as you can take for testing and validating a dev test environment. Now, maybe you come to an alpha release where you have a selected group of customers or users. Well, maybe you have the same setup, a little bit bigger this time. You have 2 servers instead of 1, maybe a slightly bigger database, and your average cost per month would probably be $15 on the platform. And let's say that you found the key features that you want and you release a minimum viable product. Well, it's exactly the same setup. What you do is enable a feature that allows you to automatically scale your infrastructure so that it can cope with the load triggers that you tell it to. And that would probably cost you $235 per month. So in summary, I think that in the idea generation to MVP stage, we help you guys test, pivot, iterate on ideas very, very quickly and very, very cheaply. So leverage the platform that way. At the same time, we recognize that startups play in a double-sided market. That is why we also work with a lot of the accelerators and incubators out in the region, especially in the Philippines as well, with IdeaSpace, with Kickstart Ventures, and not just help them with credits and stuff, but I think the biggest value that they've seen from us is we actually bring in the right experts, people with startup backgrounds, people that would sit with them and architect their solutions to make it cheaper. Because you know what? After one point, credits are going to run out. And if you're not architected to be scalable from the get-go, you're not going to be able to make it to scale and profitability. With that, I thank you for your time. And my team and I are here for the next few days. Let me just call out my team. Karim Hopper, who's our solutions architect, will be conducting a workshop for you guys who have an idea and want to test it out this afternoon. Feel free to join us 5:30 for a Elastic Beanstalk workshop. Another colleague of mine, Jonathan Limbo, is here, and feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Franco. Your certificate will be awarded by our very own Ms. Tina Amper. Your certificate will be brought later to you personally by Ms. Tina Amper.
I want to say a few words once again. AWS is awesome. They're a great support of ours from Start Weekend Cebu last year to Geeks on the Beach now. Joe, our beloved friend, could not make it today, but Franco at the last minute is able to come. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Franco.
Join the workshop, because if you don't join the workshop, you can't win the $1,000 worth of credits from AWS.
That's your idea. I think that's my challenge for you guys. Try it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as Franco said, that's a great way to validate your MVP. So at $250 per MVP, if you win the $1,000, that's 4 MVPs. So that's 4 ideas you could really test out. I think it's a great opportunity to use AWS. All right.
All right, so we're on to our next panel discussion.
Yes.
The topic is Panel B, the evolution of the Philippine startup ecosystem.
I'm excited for this.
Okay, so to introduce our introductory speaker, you can do it, man.
Is none other than Earl Valencia. So Earl is the president of IdeaSpace, one of the incubators here in the Philippines. He was born on June 20th, 1982 at Granada Hills, California. He's an aspiring technology leader looking to integrate business knowledge, engineering expertise, and a passion for innovation to help facilitate and create strategies or products for leading global technology corporations, development organizations, and entrepreneurs. So he's going to deliver our introductory speech for this panel, and then we'll bring up all the panel chairs. So without further ado, let's put our hands together for Earl Valencia from IdeaSpace.
Video. Good.
Come on up, Earl. There's Earl.
Hello. I think I want to do the conga now or something. Okay, where's the clicker? It's fine. Let's go to the next slide. I think before I start, to level set everything, and maybe people who are not from the Philippines, let's do the video to talk about the opportunities in our country.
I realized that education is such a huge problem in this country. There's so much hunger in the Philippines.
The biggest roadblock really is the fast-growing population of our country.
We are a country in transition, and as we transition, there are actually a lot of problems that need to be solved.
I think all businesses and all development work comes first from finding a problem, and most importantly, a problem that you have the skills to address.
We see big organizations working on big issues, but we also see a lot of everyday heroes, they say, making a difference in the communities where they work.
The Philippines has always been this potential that has not seen its potential.
At a certain point, I realized that I wanted to do something with more social impact. What drives me is being able to provide opportunities to every Filipino.
I want to improve healthcare in this country. I want to improve the lives of people.
Harness our natural resources and to change the world one company at a time.
Using my talents to really lift up our country through what I know best.
Economic and personal empowerment is something very powerful. For me, that kind of transformation is also what drives me.
If there's anything that's going to come out, especially in development in the Philippines, I think a key thing is governance, good governance.
All along, I had this interest and passion for applying private sector discipline to development and to do something that had social impact.
My passion is really to see meaning in what I do and to see actual impact in the lives of the people that we really want to help.
Definitely headed in the right direction. That's very loud and clear.
I believe that the Filipino is one of the greatest minds in the whole world, but people just have to know that we exist.
Non-profit sector here in the country, civil society is very strong, primarily because it's natural for Filipinos to help each other.
I'm most motivated when I see for myself how our programs have actually helped uplift the quality of life of the people.
And that drives me every day when I get up and realize that what we're doing is benefiting the lives of millions of Filipinos.
Knowing that at least you're making some small difference.
Passion won't always carry you through, but if you send your heart forward, the rest of you will follow.
In order for us to compete, we figured that we have to strengthen our education program.
To make the Philippines a destination for business and technology.
To be able to see that in my lifetime, our country has become one of the leading countries, not only in Asia, but in the world.
Good. You like that video? The message really that I resonate with me is the Philippines has been what? A potential country that hasn't seen its potential. But I think the time is now for us to actually achieve our potential. So let's go to the slides to talk about really how the growth of the ecosystem in the Philippines have started and really good for all the entrepreneurs and startups and potential investors in the Philippines and not from the Philippines. For the first time, maybe in the history of the Philippines, our ecosystem is somewhat complete. Right? Literally, someone can support you from the idea stage all the way up to the expansion stage out of the country. And that's something that hasn't been done, I think, ever in our history. So when I talk about the ecosystem growth, actually it's interesting. I was in Silicon Valley and I moved back to the Philippines about a year and a half ago. And guys who were in the panel a while ago were in the same room. We're in Silicon Valley and said, how do we actually complete our ecosystem? We had this discussion for years, right, Paco? I mean, always. How do we complete the ecosystem? It's quite interesting that I think it is happening only in the past year and a half that it is almost complete or completing itself. And why is the time so good for everybody in this room? Right? Did you know that we are the fastest growing economy in the entire continent of Asia? Did you know that? Yes, some of you, yes. But this is something that people don't even know. But I think this is something we should say to everybody, that if you want to invest in growth, invest in the Philippine startup, right? We actually have an advanced economy structure built on services, and FDI is coming in. So these are things, honestly, which is unsexy slides, but a lot of investors all around the world should know if they talk to you, right? And why is our economy actually quite interesting? We have a large population, a young population, and we can talk in English. So that is something that I think we have to figure out how to capitalize, right? So what is the challenge and the opportunity? As you know, I worked in Cisco in Silicon Valley, and I did an academic exercise. I told my intern, who's from Stanford, and said, how many companies would it take to total the entire economy of the Philippines, headquartered in Silicon Valley? How many companies in Silicon Valley would it take to be equivalent to the entire economy of the Philippines? What's the answer? Engineers. Count. 6. 6 companies headquartered in Silicon Valley is equivalent to the entire economy of the country from a GDP perspective. But it's not just actually a sad note. It is an opportunity, because if you can actually find that one company, you could change the entire economy, right? And hopefully you guys will say yes to that challenge. We have to find who? The next Tony Stark. Who here wants to be Tony Stark? Right? Iron Man. Right? I want to be Tony Stark. Right? But we want to find people who do it because it's cool, do it because it will help people, the transformation, and do it because they want to do it for others more than yourself. And that's why. You know why? Because we are in a developing nation. Right? We cannot ignore that. We have to figure out solutions that will save and help millions of people. That's the low-hanging fruit. Right? And then how do we support people? Literally from awareness all the way up to scaling. Right? So at least in Idea Space, we look at just one part of the journey. And the next slide will tell you who are all the people as part to help you with that journey. Right? Literally from R&D all the way up to expansion. Right? We just focus literally on the idea of the product. But this is actually a very interesting slide for everybody. From R&D all the way up to expansion, it is almost complete. You have someone at least to talk to at every stage, right? You typically don't talk to investors and say, invest in my company, literally from idea all the way up to expansion. You talk to many different players that have different bite sizes, right? And most of it, if not all, was only started in the past year and a half, right? So just imagine, without those things in the middle, it's heavy maybe in R&D, and then expansion capital. Who will fill in the gap in the middle? That was the question we always asked when we were in Silicon Valley. Where are the angels? Where are the early stage investors? And they are here. So you all have a chance to actually get support, if not capital, with some guys here in the Philippines, right? But as we talked about, and a good case study is what we had in Idea Space. We had 700 submissions, and we thought that we would get, a lot of solo-mo, right, social, local, mobile-only solutions, which we did. But we also had submissions in agriculture, energy, healthcare, transportation, food, even mining. So I think we have to broaden ourselves. What are the needs of our country and how do we actually solve it? That's really it, right? So some examples of the guys that we supported, we invested in a water purification company. We invested in joints. We invested in somebody that makes you not wait in lines anymore, right? And somebody who does the kayak for buses, right? These are what I call is not that sexy businesses, but these are some things because they realize there's a need in the Philippines to do it, and maybe the needs in other parts of the world, right? So this is just an illustrative example, but what we have to actually convince is to have large companies to support startups, right? It's actually good that, we are doing it, as well as the Ayala Group is doing it, but we need to get everybody on board, right? Because I think that's really the missing link. But at the same time, people like Amazon, the government, right? Even AIM, even other multinationals have realized that in order to grow their Philippine operations, they have to support people like you. So take advantage of the opportunity because our time is now. In conclusion, before we do the panel, I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts, right? This is your time, own it. Number 2, we have started it. Let's keep the momentum alive. Honestly, we have 5 years to prove ourselves. Let's take advantage of the next 5 years, right? We have to let people know who we are, and we can only do it if we do it together as a community. Great. So thanks so much. I think we have the panel next. Appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
Thank you.
You may.
Thank you.
I have
Please
this
take a seat.
Iron Man thing here.
All right, so now we're going to introduce our panel chair for this panel B, the evolution of the Philippine startup ecosystem. None other than Christina Laskowski. Christina serves as founder and managing director of Alchemy Partners, a management consulting firm providing hands-on operations consulting and advisory services to early stage and growth companies. Her career includes 13 years as a branded consumer, life sciences, and technology banker, FBR Capital Markets, East Peak Advisors, and Pacific Growth Equities, and 3 years in equity research at Hambrecht and Quist LLC. She has participated in both merger and acquisition and capital raise, helping raise in excess of $2 billion. Thank you, Christina.
All right, our next panelist is Paco Sandejas from Nara Venture Capital. He's the managing partner at Nara Venture Capital, a boutique early-stage investment group that has invested in over 25 high-technology companies, with some notable companies being Infi, that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange, SIRF, which is now in CIR, Iconos, which is listed on NASDAQ, and Sandbridge. Paco serves on the board of Quintech, Astute Networks, StratPoint Technologies, PSI Technologies, Credit Information Corporation, and Zepto Computing. Previously, he was the vice president of H&Q Asia Pacific, where he helped lead notable early-stage investment in Transmedia, which was later acquired by Cisco, and Headstrong, which was acquired by Genpact. Thanks, Paco. Let's give him a round of applause.
Next up, we have Jay Fajardo, the founder and CEO of ProudCloud, an agile Ruby development firm based in Manila. He has been a tech entrepreneur since the mid-80s and runs Roof Camp, a regular gathering that hopes to inspire innovation and entrepreneurship at the grassroots. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Jay Fajardo.
Next up, we have none other than Tina Emper, the founder and organizer of TechTalks.ph, as well as Geeks on a Beach. Tina, or more casually known as Teens, founded TechTalks.ph, which is a nonprofit grassroots community of tech, startup, and business enthusiasts to give back to the Philippines. Many members share their talent and time to help the community. As such, TechTalks.ph members are the volunteer lead organizers behind Startup Weekend Cebu, Cebu On 3 Pitching Competition, and Startup Weekend Davao. Teens has a background in product marketing, business development, recruitment, and research for tech companies in the international markets. She is passionate about supporting startups and sharing best practices with the tech community. Let's put it together for Tina Emperor.
Next up, we have Martin Pascual. He is a partner at Nest. Is he here? Martin Pascual, let's put our hands together for him.
Our next panelist is Eric Su, the founder of PickLife, or LifeBit. He's currently working as the co-founder and CEO of Twiddle.inc, which is a creative director at Cavalcade Games. He worked before as a Flash animator builder, freelance at Aardman Animations Limited. Let's put our hands together for Eric Su.
And last but not the least, we have Paul Pajo from Coconut.ph. Is this true? Paul Pajo is an experienced company setup specialist, project manager, project discovery, integration proponent. He's an OD/HR consultant, web integration, strategic innovator, content management, delivery platforms, and BPO. Aside from that, some of his specialties are transnational partnerships, executive search, prototyping, and pilot project facilitation of new business models in both post-conflict Afghanistan and first world like Dubai and UAE countries. He is a CEO and co-founder of Coconut.ph and is currently the developer evangelist, Prism, partner management, developer relations. He has so many hats. Let's welcome from Smart Communications, Mr. Paul Pajo. He has a fans club. So ladies and gentlemen, our panel.
Does this work? Hello? Hello, hello, hello. Mic check. I think we're ready. Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And welcome to all our panelists here today. I think it's a very interesting conversation that we're having today, the evolution of the Philippine startup ecosystem. What many of you in the room are probably asking yourselves is, when did this all begin? How did it happen in 18 months? And interestingly enough, during dinner last night with Paco Sandejas, we were talking about the early days in 1993, when the consumer internet was taking fold. Paco was taking his PhD at Stanford. One of my other board members with Stack Silicon Valley, Estella Lulu Keeson, was there. And we had a lot of inspiration from working in Silicon Valley. I had just begun my career in investment banking at Hambrecht and Quist, which was one of the four horsemen covering emerging companies in the Valley. And I think we were ahead of our time. We all had dreams and visions of seeing one of the companies listed on NASDAQ as a Filipino company, and many of us were extremely interested in coming back and helping. But I think the interest ran ahead. We all drank the Silicon Valley Kool-Aid. Some of us moved back here. And in 1996, 1997, the infrastructure wasn't in place to support the vision I think that many of us had at the time. So fast forward 10 years, now we see the evolution of a tech ecosystem, and it's inspirational, it's exciting, it's amazing. And I want to share with you some of the background via our panelists here today, the role that they play in the ecosystem, elements that we think are equally necessary, in addition to what Earl Valencia had shared with us earlier. In addition to the funding and the R&D component, there are other elements that need to be in place. We've actually highlighted 6 in a report that we did. Generally, when you study the ecosystems of many of the countries, there are on average 6 elements that are in place. You have the schools. I mean, similar to Silicon Valley, the schools play a very strong role. And right now, if you've studied Ukraine and other emerging markets, many of them have accelerators or communities built around the universities, because typically a lot of the ideas grow there. We're not saying they're exclusive to the universities, but typically they're there. So academia plays a role. The private sector plays a role because the private sector is in essence going to hire some of the talent that comes from these schools, or have R&D platforms that are going to provide these ideas to turn into real ideas and real businesses. We have the funding sector, which Earl had covered earlier. We have community groups, organizations, grassroots organizations like Tech Talks that enable everyone in the community to talk, share ideas, collaborate. We also have the legal entities that are required, especially in technology and in science. Generally, for many of the companies, IP is a valuable asset for a company to have, and so you do need the legal rules and regulations protecting your assets in country. And I'd like to hear some comments, if anybody can comment on that today, because in 2010, we fell short of that. And lastly, in addition to the legal component, we have government, because government also helps enforce or create the policies for businesses, to enable them to protect what they have, protect some of their business advantages. And so those are some of the elements that create the ecosystem. And many of the panelists here fit in those areas. And I'd like for each of you to quickly talk about your role, what you've played, what you play in the ecosystem, what has changed for you, what inspired you to come. I mean, some of you, like Paco, you moved back. Tina, you've moved back. Jojo, who was here on the panel before us, he moved back last year as well. So he's here based in Asia. And Earl, in 2012, we had Jojo, Tina, and Earl moved back here, inspired by what they were seeing and what was going on. So I'd like to hear from them.
Since I'm the old fart in the group, somebody from this community actually called me old school. And I guess that's okay, because it's true. Like Christina said, we've started trying to do brain gain since 1992. So we've been doing Brain Gain Network for 21 years. It's a long time. So because of that, you can have a free shirt if you registered. But really, what's important, I think, is in this change from when I came back in 1997 and I used to try and do e-trade here and found out there was no market yet. The things that were lacking were infrastructure. And the infrastructure was a little spotty yet. You could make phone calls to the US, but it's very expensive. Today, thanks to Cisco and the others, there's just so much broadband. Money was there. I ended up not working on my own for my own startup because the market wasn't there. And the VCs I went to said, why don't you work with other people's money? And that was H&Q Asia Pacific. And that's how I got to know more about what's going on in Asia. Those guys are venture capital, private equity. The minimum would be $3 million. We would even do $20 million deals like we did at Headstrong. So that was the kind of money. Today, the change is there's a lot more angel type of investments, and thanks to the groups here. What's also interesting in the market, when we came back 15 years ago, the market was really more about services, doing electronics for the big IBMs, the Hitachis. That's what was going on in the Philippines. And you needed big money to do that. So hence the match between H&Q and these big companies. But today, because you guys, with the cloud infrastructure, thanks to Amazon, our sponsor, and others, you can start your startup on $250,000. Hence, it is now actually a challenging time for venture capitalists like myself. We're now having to go down to the earlier stage. So Earl, to your slide, we actually go down now. We're doing R&D thanks to one of the companies we invest in. So we're doing R&D in septo computing for government educational systems, for example. So what's the last one that's changed? And here I'm very happy Christina talks about the main thing, if you guys want money from venture capitalists or angel investors, is you have to have the team. You have to have the people. And so I was talking to some of the people in my table, and when we came back in '97, people looked at me strange. You have a PhD in electrical engineering, you do optoelectronics and micro machining. What the hell is that? Go back, you're useless, right? Well, there were so few of us. Actually, there was none. So fast forward to today, there's so many of you, and I'm so happy to be not that important anymore. You guys, you're all here. And what's nice is it's not, and Christina and I used to say, it's not only about Filipinos. It's about anybody who wants to locate here and take advantage of that 100 million person market that Earl put up. It's a big economy. It's interesting. There's many things, many infrastructural things that have to happen. So for software, the people are there. Now I'll go back to my earlier love, which is hardware. This ecosystem I just spoke about really is more about software, which I know many of you are at. But Earl just said, there's actually a lot of startups in other things, basic science. And it's good that Martin is here. He can tell you about maybe, how about drug discovery? How about healthcare? These things still need investment. This morning, I was late because of this watch. This watch is a market for one of our companies in China that does Bluetooth, low energy, Quintic, it was mentioned. And so, in that board meeting, we're talking about the need for, if the Philippines, my other company, StratPoint, is to participate in the development of these health devices, we need more hardware engineers who know the full system. So we do need nerds. Not just nerds who know Amazon, but nerds who also know signal processing, who know about algorithms for, just all sorts of things. So I'll stop here because I'm glad that people are here now. But if we can find more, that's great. And for those of you who are in the group and are still lost like me, I'm trying to figure out what's my role, how can I help out Tina and Tech Talks and all of you guys in this ecosystem. What I did was, I can't meet you all, so I built the Brain Gain Network together with Meg Montes. That's how I keep the interaction going with you guys. And I hope you guys can find it also useful to keep the interaction going, because it's kind of like LinkedIn or AngelList or for the Philippines. So if you could sign up and you're interested to be in this ecosystem, please do so and take advantage to reach out to myself or to anybody on the panel. And I hope that's useful for you. Thank you.
If I may add, I told Paco this before already, so I'm your proof of concept, diba? Remember, in Silicon Valley, he spoke to those of us when we were still in California. He says, come back to the Philippines. And I approached him and I said, I want to come back, but what was I going to do in the Philippines? And he's like, oh.
You're going to do Geeks on the Beach, right? And it's amazing.
But we're here, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I think a lot of the guys here that, familiar faces know about Roof Camp that we started around 2008, 09. That was after I exited from my company. I exited Airborne Access, and I put up this company called Proud Cloud, which is a software web development company. But at the same time, we found the need to have some kind of venue to bring geeks together, developers, would-be entrepreneurs, and create an atmosphere that breaks down the traditional dynamics between the players in the industry. So we wanted to make it unstructured, fueled by beer, bring in a speaker to set the tone of the night, inspire people. And yeah, guys like Paul, one of the first guys that spoke was Jojo, and we had it in our office, about 15 people, right? And so word got out and people started coming, developers, designers, creative guys, business people, and then it became a gathering of about 80, 90 people at the time, but still maintaining the same formula. The real purpose of that was to create the community, right? And to make sure that people would stop seeing each other as competitors, but rather as cohorts in the same game. And I think that since we started doing that regularly, people started becoming friends, people started hiring from each other. hiring each other, giving business to each other. Then it became much more friendly, and we wanted to capture that buzz, that type of, I don't know if you'd call it a Valley San Francisco buzz, right? But that's what we were shooting for. And as a result of that, people, Terrence actually asked me if we could, if I was interested to organize Startup Weekend Manila, the first one. And Startup Weekend was still up and coming at that time, and it was a great idea. So I said, sure, why not? And then me, along with some of the other guys in the room, did that, and that sort of brought the startup community into the mainstream because people started seeing it in the newspapers. People thought that the basic premise behind the Startup Weekend was such a cool thing, and it was so different and novel. So, it generated that buzz, and we've been having that over the years. We've had a couple of Manila ones. We've had Cebu, Davao. And I think that helped pretty much bring the community onto a level where setting up a startup is a viable option for a career path. Whereas before, being Asian, we're all taught by our parents to latch onto that corporate gig for 50, 60 years and retire. Okay? So, we were trying to introduce that, inspire people, try to bring in the guys from the States, tell their story. It was really that, tell your story so that the Filipinos could actually emotionally attach to it and believe that they could actually be the next success story as well. So, after Startup Weekend, we're here. We've got so many things. We've got Geeks on a Beach. We've got all the hack events that are trying to develop the talent. We've got so many pitch competitions. I forgot to mention that even early on 3 came. I was around the same time, and it was very early days, right? I mean, Jojo was really commenting about the quality, but that's changed in a few years. We're in that level. We've got startups coming out, and I think it's come to a point where we're now identifying what the gaps are funding-wise, early stage funding-wise, maybe follow-on funding, I don't know, and talent, particularly engineering talent. We're running out fast of engineering talent, and management talent. Management talent that is familiar with the startup game, because it's different in a startup. You have to be, you have to believe in the product to work for it. Sometimes you're not going to be receiving the paycheck you're used to. So, yeah.
What role in management specifically, any?
CEO, co-founders, CFO, co-founders, yes, but sometimes it's really the business and operational side, because we've got a lot of we found startups that were founded by engineers. That's common, but then now we've got startups founded by business people looking for engineers. So that's where we're at right now.
Does anybody else want to come in? I mean, it sounds like we have the funding in place. We need to add more talent to the plate to serve the needs that the community is recognizing. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, so Jay mentioned nga, di ba, parang sa roof camp, parang I was parang inspired by that idea na, hey, we can actually do this in the Philippines, because previous to that, I came from Afghanistan and Dubai. In Afghanistan, it's post-conflict. All of their talent were either dead or they were refugees. But you're actually able to do like business competitions, and after 2 years, there were people like having their NGOs. So sabi ko, this actually works in a post-conflict environment. Why shouldn't it work in the Philippines? And then in Dubai, remember Dubai Village, Internet Village, Knowledge Village. I was one of the first Filipinos to start up there. And the South African person running there said, actually you're the one teaching us how to do the paperwork because it's the first time we're doing it. So they had the money, like what's happening, but the people actually, Filipinos were the one developing it actually. So we can actually bring this to the Philippines, and after Roof Camp, that's when Smart decided to have a developer community, because my previous work in Asia Pay, I was a director. That was our problem. We kept trying to convince people about e-commerce with Andre and Lee, I think for 4 years, but there was no traction with the companies. So we realized the mistake was we needed to actually talk to the developers about the e-commerce, because they were the ones who understand all these things. So you learn by all your mistakes, right, and all these insights. So now I think in Smart DevNet, we have about 4,000 plus developers to all these hack events. And that's our dream, no? Parang I talked to Earl, hacker to founder, developers can create apps and prototypes. And then if we connect with the right people in the community, we can do early market validation, we can do user traction, and then they can be incorporated, and then we can have the IPO. And like you were mentioning, I think the IPO fail, all this stuff just happened 2 years ago. So now we actually have a way of closing the IP loop, because that's the hard part. I was talking to Sermon Ibrahim. He said, how come there's no startups coming from the campuses? So we realized we have a program in Smart called Sweep. We've been doing for 10 years. So every year we would have 120 prototypes. So these are not just ideas, prototypes by engineers, but it never becomes a product. It turns out very few schools, aside maybe from UP Ateneo, have an IP policy in place. So there's no way for you to actually extract the IP, and then there's no business structure to actually give that IP to. So I think that's what's going to happen in the next few months. Once that structure is in place, we have the funding, we have the go-to-market. If we have a way of actually moving the IP to a business structure, Idea Space does that. I think Kickstarter and other accelerators are doing that partnership with DOST. We would have more of these things happening in the near future.
Do you want to comment on that, Earl, with regards to the IP?
Yeah, I think more often than not, we think of IP as a second thought. But I think we also, as we mature as an ecosystem, we have to think of, are there really something we could IP so that in general we could have a global story, right? Because if we then want to go expand to other markets, IP could become an issue. And then also with, at least from an investment perspective, it is actually an asset of the company. So you also have to think about it, maybe not as a primary thought when you start out, but at least once you get some traction, once you start to share your story, you then have to think, hey, should I actually think about protecting my idea? And you know, it's quite interesting because I have had a lot of interaction with our IPO Philippines, and they're very progressive, right? So there's no excuse for us now not to at least consider if we should start protecting our own ideas, and that will also help the economy in general rise up the innovation index. Because let me tell you, I think in the past year, patented, the number of applications from Filipinos are only probably less than 30 for the whole year, right? So that's actually not a very good statistic, honestly. So I hope that even one of you guys in this room would do it. That would already change it by how many percent?
All right, we have a question from the audience. It's actually for Eric Su, the founder on the panel. Eric, what do you see lacking in the ecosystem right now?
My perspective is a little bit different from these guys, because we actually started our company not oblivious to the startup like template. Like we just wanted to start a company to showcase the Filipino talent globally. But as we went along with our company, we found out that there's such a thing as startup. And over time, I looked at the Silicon Valley model, and there was a lot of things that weren't present here. So one of the early missing ones was a proper community, early stage funding, accelerators, and familiarity from potential recruits for your team. But all of that are now commonplace here. So I'm very thankful for that. But right now, there's still a few key things that are holding us back. Like in terms, my number one problem is how the engineers and the raw talent doesn't value equity. So that inhibits a lot of startups as they need to pony up a lot of cash. So that's slowly being solved by spreading the knowledge of startups in universities, but it's a slow-moving thing. Another is we still lack a home run. So in terms of the global space, we're not even on their radar. So maybe the solution there is to focus on help each other more, focus on a few promising startups, and really accelerate them. Because when we have at least one home run, then the ecosystem will just speed up in a very different level than if we just not be very competitive and not help each other. So that's one of the weakness of our ecosystem, that we are still lacking in terms of cooperation. And another more fundamental thing is most of our startups are very insecure. So we cannot, like, there are so few startups here that lack chutzpah. So what I mean is the self-confidence to really go for something big, like want to shoot for the stars. That's the only way we can really, like, be known globally in terms of how talented we are in IT. And there's no reason not to believe in that, because we're the best IT workers in the world. Yeah, so it's just the culture here that we're really insecure and we're really servile, and like I want to change that, and we can do it. We have the raw materials, the talent, but we have a very, very poor culture here. So I hope the ecosystem gains eliminates that weakness soon.
I want to comment on that. And the question I want to have for both Tina and maybe Manuel, Earl. So I was absent from the country for about 11 years, and I was inspired when Jojo Flores of Plug and Play was invited by DTI to put on a pitch competition during the e-services event. And that was the first time I was exposed to the startup, or the then startup community, where 22 to 25 companies pitched. You know, that inspired us to do a lot of the different activities, including the On3 pitch competition. And with that event, we tried to promote best practices that were in Silicon Valley to increase the level of how the startups would think, how the businesses would think and execute. So that inspired us to do more and more. And I want to hear from Tina and some of the other members of the panel. What inspired you to come back? What did you see then? What are your observations now?
You should ask Martin, because Martin's
Martin.
very recent.
Oh, okay. And Martin and Tina, if you could provide some comment to the audience, because I think it would be inspirational to hear from you.
Yeah, so I was working in the States, and I came back about 4 years ago. And so I was working for a large corporation here, and in healthcare, and we decided to basically try and diversify what we're doing, and really trying to understand the technology scene here. I attended one of these events I think it was October in Cebu. And it was really amazing watching all of these startups, so excited, and they're young, and they're taking risks by actually doing a startup rather than joining large corporations. So, and I know this is sort of similar to a lot of large corporations here, which are trying to understand the technology space, right? And they're saying, oh, we need to get into social media, we need to go online. And similar to what my company was experiencing, we also needed to understand it. And so that's why I think the points that the speakers had brought up earlier, which is do the unsexy thing, which is really find business problems and solve them, right? So in our case, we were first looking for healthcare startups. But there's not too much, so we diversified into general technology. And looking what was around, we decided we needed to move fast because we saw a lot of things happening. So just from October last year, we set up a fund, set up a small incubator, and have already made 4 investments, so in less than 12 months in just general technology and maybe 1 healthcare, right? Now, I really want to encourage all these startups, but sort of my little pet peeve from the perspective as an investor, but also one of the things I try and do with wearing my corporate hat is a lot of the startups that I meet will ask either for funding or mentorship. What I try and do is do pilot projects. If you can do a pilot project and you can execute, then we'll look at either being a client or making an investment, right? So now, my pet peeve with startups and with this whole thing is you have to execute, right? The distance from being potential to being realization is execution. On a very practical level, what that means is keeping your promises. What you say you'll do. So responding to emails within 24 to 48 hours, it's a big step. And when I look at startups and how to invest, I always look at the management and if they can execute and deliver, right? So because I see there's time and I want Tina to talk, my parting word is execute. That is, as an investor, single most important thing, right?
So just in closing, we organized this event. I was inspired by everyone here in the room, right? So I'm a product of Roof Camp and BGN and Stack and everyone here who's trying to help the Philippines. We created this event, the startup weekends, Geeks on the Beach, all the tech talks, meetups that I've had in Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, and Bacolod. We're doing that because we want to give you an opportunity and a platform to make your dreams come true, okay? We're giving you an opportunity. The platform is right there. If you want to accomplish your dream, whether it be to create a startup or to be the best Ruby person out there, whatever it is, there is a platform for you to accelerate the process. Whereas before, you might be just one person in some boony in Bohol that's trying to work on the internet on your software solution for your pharmaceutical company or for your botica. But now, when you build that product, you Google tech, you Google tech or Cebu or tech in Manila, you're gonna see Roof Camp, you're gonna see Startup Weekend, you're gonna see Tech Talks. Show up, join the community. I know you guys are here because you want something from this event. You want connections, you want to be a CEO of a company. This is an opportunity. The key is execution, and the key is to be reliable. We're all Filipinos here. We love the island time, but it drives me insane. I've been here a year now, so murag natakda na sa ko. I do a little bit of Filipino time also, but I work with a lot of good people, but we're all very busy and we all want to make money, so we accept multiple projects and we never can do a quality job in any of the things that we're doing. That includes me, so this puts a lot of pressure in us, but we need to focus, do the right thing, focus on the quality and the way you communicate and the way you deliver products and services. Find the right partners, but anyhow, this is it. We're here. Take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you so much to our panel. May we request you to remain on stage as we present to you our certificates from Dave Overton. you so much to our panel. Let's give them a big round of applause. All right. So the Hi, Dave.
Hey, how you doing?
So it's good to know that the startup ecosystem in the Philippines is evolving and it's growing,
Yeah.
and the missing parts are getting filled in.
Yeah.
If you still have any questions, just feel free to approach any of them, hunt them down, and talk to them. All right? So in the meantime, we need to quicken their spirits.
Yes.
Yeah,
Are you
'cause-
guys sleepy?
You guys sleepy? So let's do something. All right, everybody, I want everybody to stand up to their feet right now.
All right,
Help me
everyone
wake
stand up.
you up. Help us wake you up. Come on, stand up. We are going to have our second panel discussion in a bit. We're quite excited for that because, right? What?
Let's get our groove on, guys.
Okay, let's
Come
play
on.
some music. Let's give us some good music.
I mean, Boracay has like a lot of discos and a lot of partying, so let's bring it here, all right? So we're gonna spend 30 seconds getting your groove on. So, Mr. DJ, can you hit it?
Come on.
Don't make me start rapping. It's ugly.
Wait.
Okay, there we go. Come
All
on,
right.
guys. Come on, geeks. We got.
I don't like this music, but yeah, anyways. I think we're becoming entertainment quickly, Dave. Everybody hands up. Turn around.
It's on live stream, guys. Come on.
High five the person beside you. Low five the person on the other side. Low five.
Anyone got the robot? Come on.
Listen up, y'all, because this is it.
Woohoo! Give it up for Dave.
Alright, you feeling active? Okay. So I just want to announce that there's some coffee over here. If you guys need some coffee and energy for the next panel, then let's do our geek dating. Okay, we're gonna go back to geek speed dating.
All right.
There's a lot of great partners in the room. You might find your co-founder here at Geeks on the Beach. So spend the next 1 to 2 minutes. Find someone across the room that you want to talk to. Talk
Someone you
about what
do not
you're
know.
doing. Someone you don't know.
Someone
That's
you don't
right.
know.
That's right. Someone you don't know. Tell them what you're doing. Give them a pitch. Because later this evening, we're going to be doing fire pitches. We're going to bring a sign-up sheet to the back wall, and you can sign up. You'll have 2 minutes on stage in front of the entire GoAb audience.
All right.
guys.
Can we have the music a little bit lower? Just a little bit. Yeah, we'd like to announce fire pitches are happening this afternoon. If you want to participate by pitching, please sign up in a form at the back. If it's not there, then look for the form. If it's not there, look for me or Dave. All right? So please do that. Meanwhile, you've got 1 minute and 22 seconds left before we sit down and go to our third panel session, which is our last session for this afternoon. Music. go back to your seat and bring coffee with you.
Listen up, y'all, because this is it. The beat that I'm bringing is delicious. That's a beautiful sunrise. Para el world. That's it, España. Love it, that girl. Kiss it now. I feel so close to you right now, it's a force field. I wear my heart up on my sleeve like a big deal. Your love pours down on me, surround me like a waterfall. And there's no stopping us right now.
All right,
I
let's
feel
get back
so
to our
close
seats.
to you right
Come on,
now.
Geeks.
I feel so close to you right now, it's a force field. I wear my heart up on my sleeve like a big deal. Your love pours down on me, surround me like a waterfall. And there's no stopping us right now.
If you ran out
I
of
feel
business
so
cards, no problem. We've got you covered. There's GoWab generic business cards outside being sold that are blank. So you can pick them up or just write your name and your contact information on them and give them away.
알랑가 몰라 왜 화끈해야 하는 건지 알랑가 몰라 왜 발끈해야 하는 건지 알랑가 몰라 아리까리하면 까리해
All right, we are also raffling out items and very cool prizes. So some of these are like foldable bags from Smart. We have like leather cases for phones. We have smart plugs from Fine Upgrades. We have gift certificates from Old Cebu Walks, like a walking tour of Old Cebu. Laptop bags and DevNet bags as well. So if you see somebody with a green shirt touring around the venue with a fishbowl, make sure you drop your business card in. Never mind the fishbowl. We're getting it from the registration list.
알랑가 몰라 왜 미끈해야 하는 건지 알랑가 몰라 왜 새끈해야 하는 건지 알랑가 몰라 빨리빨리 와서 난리네 알랑가 몰라 난리 나서 빨리 해 있잖아 마리아 너의 머리 허리 다리 종아리 마리아 Good feeling good 부드럽게
All right, may we request the music to be toned down for a bit? And may we request all the geeks to please settle down and move back to your seats. We will be starting our third. This is our third, right?
Yeah.
Our third panel, which
Panel C.
Panel C, which by the way is not our last panel. I was mistaken. I apologize. It is not our last panel. All right, may we request all the geeks to please settle down?
We need like a command line code for that, you know. Purge.
Psh, what do you expect me to do?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, everybody, if you see somebody standing, grab them and pull them into your seat.
That's right.
Come on. Or give them the stare.
The stare.
Stare at them. Hey, you. Okay, everybody standing. After the count of 10, we will ask you to dance on stage. All right, I repeat, everybody standing. Yes, that includes you, Angela. After the count of 10, we'll be asked to dance on stage by Dave Overton.
Yes.
All right, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my gosh, they want to dance. 5, 6, 7, 8. This is not
9.
working. Maybe they do want to dance.
Maybe they do.
All right.
Okay.
Let's let them dance.
Bring it on. I see Paco Sandejas. He's still standing. You
Let him
wanna
dance. Come on.
Paco, let's
Dance,
Yeah, there
dance.
we go.
All
Woo,
right.
woo.
Who else is standing? Let them dance. Come on.
Who else is that?
Jaideep is standing, my friend.
Jaideep. Let's see
Jaideep.
some moves.
You have to dance, Jaideep.
Yeah, go
All
Jaideep.
right, come on. Anybody else standing? Come on, let's get seated, guys. Come on.
All right. So we have Panel C coming up, and our introductory speaker for Panel C is none other than Jojo Flores. He's the co-founder of Plug and Play Tech Center, a Silicon Valley-based tech startup accelerator which he started in January 2006. He built a community of 300 plus tech startups, 500 plus angel investors, 170 plus VC investors, 100 large tech corporations and service partners, 50 domestic and international universities, and numerous experts in various technology fields. Since inception, Plug and Play startups have been able to raise an excess of $750 million. Wow. Jojo currently serves as a board member and VP of internal operations at American Liquid Packaging Systems, that's ALPS, where he successfully started and co-founded 12 companies in over 30 cities in Europe and Asia.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Very impressive.
Well, without further ado, let's bring up Mr. Jojo Flores. Let's put our hands together for Jojo.
Go, Jojo! Dancer, Jojo, dance. Come on.
One of my strengths, I'm afraid.
How about singing? I heard he can sing very well.
Wag na. No more. Wow. You're still here despite the sun and the beach outside. Huh? I'm impressed. I have just 3 slides actually for the intro. Just wanted to, if it's okay with you, just wanted to frame the discussion, which is more important for the panel. So, see? Huh? Huh? It moved. You know, I'm sorry, I don't remember who I heard this from, but I did hear it, you know, a couple of years back. Many startups fail not because they have a bad idea or a bad team, but because they were not able to raise sufficient funding. You know, again, that's true. You know, I didn't put it here because I wasn't sure about the numbers, but he said something like, you know, 7 out of 10 companies really don't receive funding, and it's not healthy, okay? Because, you know, it might be the next Skype or the next Google, but they just didn't receive available funding at the right time, so they failed. And so I just wanted to emphasize, you know, how important it is for startups to receive funding. But going back to the talk, okay, the topic of the talk is going to be on fostering and funding Asian startups. So there's 2 parts here. The fostering part. Fostering part meaning, you know, helping develop, etc. And I think there are certain components on fostering startups. First is, right from the start, we need to build this culture. We talked about having a culture of, and the correct culture and mindset. We said, being Asians and being responsible children, we are obligated to study hard and then enter the corporate world or become a professional like a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. These are the things that our parents, value. But in the startup world, we need a change in this aspect of our mindset. Second is, we've heard about this many times. It takes a community to raise a child. I think it's the same thing also for startups. As I said, as I mentioned a while ago, it starts with parents. I remember this story in the book of Michael Dell. Was it Dell Way? Was it the title of his book? Anyway, when he was in college, that's when he started, putting computers together. And he would do that in a cheaper way, and he would sell it to his classmates. And he kept it a secret from his parents because they said, you have to, this is foolish. You should concentrate on your studies. This will not get you anywhere, etc., etc. One time I remember in his book, he said in his dormitory, he had to hide all of his computer components inside his bathtub because his dad was visiting him, and he was scared that his dad would find out all of these things that he had been doing foolishly, according to his dad. Anyway, to make, at the end of the story, he said, when he became successful, because he did drop out of college, and then he became successful, he put up Dell, and the only time that his dad forgave him was when he gave his dad a big house. So that was the end of his story there. But, the point is, it's not even just Asians. I mean, even parents, we have to kind of make them comfortable that, doing a startup is not a crazy or foolish thing. When you are in high school or even in the universities, the teachers play a very vital role in fostering a startup. And it's starting now. We see it in UP, for example. They have now an entrepreneurial class in the engineering department. So it's starting, So we see these movements already towards entrepreneurship. When I was in college in UP, we did not have any entrepreneurial classes. But now it's becoming more and more common. So we're seeing that. We need to have the correct teachers teach also and start fostering entrepreneurs at that early stage. Now, we also talked about, the lack of mentors, okay? When we were having lunch, I said, and this come in tandem with managers. I asked my group in the table, I said, this is a big challenge for us because, if you want to build a $100 million company, for example, you need someone with experience that have built a $100 million company. Here in the Philippines, I don't know if we have any. Maybe we do, but they're very, small in numbers. I don't know. Do we know if there's a Filipino CEO here or founder that has built a $100 million company? Well, Dado there. No, not here. Yes, we all know Dado, of course. No? But, Dado cannot be in 10 million places at one time, right? Okay? So this is a big challenge for us, but it's necessary for fostering startups. And of course, your advisors. Now, again, incubators, accelerators also play a vital role in fostering startups. Galing, no? I can't imagine this thing works. On the funding, right money at the right moment. You cannot raise $1 million, right from the start. I mean, when you're at an early stage. You maybe raise 50, 100 first, then the next round 500, then the next round $1 million, then the next round 10 million, whatever. But you have to have this in place, the right amount of money available for you at the right time. Okay, so during the discussion, we'd like to see if there are any gaps in our funding sources right now in the Philippines. And if so, these are opportunities for us, and how can we build them? Right now, these are the stages where we see funding sources. Very common are when you go to a competition, you win 100,000 pesos. I know, for example, with Smart Sweep, they give money. So those are prizes and grants. That the DOST, they give grants to startups. So these are during the early stages of the startup when you have your idea. And then, obviously, you have your family, your friends, and your fans. Okay? Now, this is also very important. Me, as an investor, I think this is important. Because at the end of the day, if you cannot convince a friend, if you cannot convince your rich uncle, if you cannot convince somebody else to invest in you, there must be something wrong. So I like to have, I like the founders to have skin in the game. So I don't know about others, but I personally like money that comes from friends, family, and fans, as long as you didn't raise 100,000 pesos for 90% of your company. Okay? Of course, you have your angels and seed. With the angels, normally, with the seed, you don't have valuation yet. Angels, you maybe have some little valuation. With the VC, of course, you have the valuation. And then one important thing that we don't have here is a real exit. And that's something also that we need to develop in our ecosystem so that we can, because at the end of the day, for your VCs, for your investors, this is why they invested in you, so that they can make money also in the process. Okay, so those are the 3 slides that I have. Yeah, I just wanted to frame, the discussion, which I think is going to be more important. So maybe we can call in the panels already.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Jojo.
Thank you, Jojo.
Let's call the rest of the panel. Now, some of the panel speakers here have already been on stage before, so we will not be reading their bios anymore, but let's all welcome them up again. For our panel chairperson, let's welcome Mr. Jay Fajardo once again back on stage. He is the founder and CEO of ProudCloud.
Welcome, Jay. Next up on the panel is Christina Laskowski, who was the panel chair from our last panel. Let's put our hands together for Christina.
She is the president of Stacks, Silicon Valley.
That's correct.
And let's call back once again Mr. Mon Ibrahim, the Deputy Executive Director of DOST ICTO. Let's put our hands together, please.
Our next panel member is Earl Valencia, the President of IdeaSpace. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right, now we have some new people that will be joining us on stage, and she is the president at Kickstart Ventures, a Globe Telecom company. Kickstart Ventures was launched in March 2012 to help support and develop a dynamic community of technopreneurs in the Philippines. It is committed to building innovative businesses in cooperation with like-minded individuals and organizations by providing funding, mentorship, and education. Globe Telecom and Kickstart Ventures are the national sponsors for Startup Weekend Philippines, Manila, Cebu, and Davao. Let's welcome the president of Kickstart Ventures, Ms. Minette Navarrete.
All right. Our next panelist is Ron Hose, who's a Silicon Valley investor and entrepreneur who recently relocated to Manila to focus on opportunities in the Asian market. Very interesting. Ron was a funding partner at Innovation Endeavors, a venture capital fund backed by Eric Schmidt with over 60 investments in early-stage technology companies in Silicon Valley and Israel. Prior to Innovation Endeavors, Ron founded TalkBox, a video communication platform that was backed by Sequoia and Bain Capital. TalkBox was sold in 2012 to Telefonica. Mr. Hose is an active investor and advisor to several Silicon Valley startups. He received his master's and bachelor's degrees in computer science from Cornell University, where he graduated at the top of his class. Wow, let's put our hands together for Ron Hose.
The last panel speaker who will join us is Beryl Li. She is the director for Southeast Asia of Seed Asia. The company seeks to raise seed stage capital for tech startups through an interactive online platform connecting qualified investors and startup companies. She's responsible for operations and partnerships in the Southeast Asia region, as well as strengthening the company's presence in China. As a member of the leadership team, she has helped develop the Seed Asia model and provide strategic guidance to the team. Beryl graduated from the University of Manchester with a bachelor's degree in international business, finance, and economics. She co-authored the Philippine Startup Report and is a contributor to Moats, Competitive Advantages of Munger and Buffett Businesses. Let's all welcome Beryl Li. I hope I got that right.
Okay, let's start. I saw the time run out really fast, the last panel, so let's get to it. This topic actually, I think, is worthy enough for two panels. One is fostering and the other is actual funding. So I'm going to try to manage that and touch on fostering, which is, I guess, is equally important. And one of the main things I think that has to be addressed is the matter of mentoring, which is critical. How important do you think it is for the Philippine startups, and do we have enough mentors to actually fill that? Anyone?
I think, hello, I think mentoring is very important. In addition to serving as an advisor and consultant, I also serve as the president of a nonprofit called the Science and Technology Advisory Council. And one of our main activities since 2011 has been the On3 Business Pitch competition. And we had started this competition not just to host a business pitch competition, but there were reasons, there was rationale behind this. My background's in equity research, so I'm always trying to find out information. And we felt that by conducting this type of business pitch competition, we would be able to discover what type of talent was out there, where the focus was, give us more information about what was going on in the community. And during the pitch competitions, one of the things that we do is we initially ask for an executive summary, which is reviewed. The companies pre-qualify, and then they show up for the competition. And the first day, we listen to how the companies pitch, and we then coach them through the pitch process. And what we found was that there were a lot of elements about the business that the startups did not think about. They had financial models that were really not in tune with their industry, or maybe not viable business models. They weren't thinking strategically about their go-to-market strategy. There are many elements that they did not think about, not because they were doing anything wrong, but because this just wasn't the way that they were trained or educated. And so we really feel that there is somewhat a lack of some of these things that could, grow, and mentorship is welcome here.
I have a couple of quick answers. First question, it's very important. I think in many ways, particularly in a very, very young community like ours, mentoring is more important than the funding, because you can find the money. but you will never make up the time that you lose if you constantly make mistakes, if you can't earn from experience of others in particular. So that's the first question. Your second question was about, do we have enough? I don't think we have enough mentors in the Philippines. I genuinely don't. I think you need a diversity of mentors. You need mentors who have been in large corporations because they need to be able to speak the language of the boardroom. They need to help you cross the bridge and make the deals and cut the arrangements and explain why you have a good business proposition and why you have a good investment. On the other hand, and this one is much more scarce in the Philippines, I think, you also need mentors who have actually had real startup experience. And that's not enough of that. I will say that I grew up in the sort of classical corporate system, Unilever, L'Oreal, and that did not prepare me for running a startup. So when I went into Level Up, you need the disciplines, but you will have a lot of skills that you've got to earn, and you do not have street credibility if you've not really been in a startup. The situations, the decision-making process is very, very different. So 2 answers, first, very, second, no, not enough.
Great, thanks. I'd like to ask Mon something about incubators and accelerators, because I know that you've been supporting that over the years. As representing the government, how do you see, what kind of value do you see in these new types of accelerators and incubators? Because we've had incubators since before, right? What kind of hope do you have for these new incubators?
Okay, let me start by telling you about some of the incubation initiatives of DOST itself. Okay, we have incubation facilities that are in partnership with the universities. We also have our own incubation facilities. Okay. Personally, if I look at the success rate of the incubatees, okay, I believe that the school-based ones are more successful, they're better managed than the ones we're running ourselves. In fact, we have some incubation facilities where every time you ask them the question, so how long have you, how many have you graduated? They always ask us the question, do we need to graduate some of our incubators? Okay. The school-based, yes, I think we have a 3-year program. Whether you make it or not, by the end of the 3 years, okay, you should be out. ICT office, we ourselves are actually working with some industry organizations. In this case, the Philippine Software Industry Association, where we're actually collaborating with PSIA on the Spring.ph initiative. It's actually a tripartite thing, ICT office, PSIA, and most of the mentors are actually coming from the Asian Institute of Management, okay? So it is very, very important, and and DOST itself has so many initiatives that should actually be able to help the startups. But at this point, actually, if I look at as to whether they're successfully or fully utilized, a lot of these things are actually underutilized. Funding, we have TAPI, okay, and we have a lot of unutilized funding with TAPI. Mainly because, okay, we do not go out of our office to actually tell everyone that we have this non-collateral funding available, okay? We also have other things like setup, okay? We can actually provide grants through PSHERD. Very, very few people are aware of this, okay? So ICT office, we see this as opportunities for us to be actually probably be the ones connecting the dots, okay? And that's the reason why we're reaching out. We're getting our hands dirty in the startup community and start telling everyone that, you know what, we have this, we can help you with this, we can help you with that.
That's great. You mentioned the funding available, and I'm assuming that those are grants. Because the
not just grants, through PCERD, yes, grants, okay, and that can run up to 10 million pesos, okay. But with TAPI, these are actually more of the seed. We don't need to see valuation, okay, to be able to actually provide funding. 100,000, 50,000 to 300,000, and basically underutilized.
Right. So your motivation to fund a startup is different from a traditional investor. Am I correct?
It is. And most of the TAPI funding right now are geared towards non-ICT innovation, okay? We're just starting to tell them that, okay, we need some of the funds to redirect some of the funds to ICT-based startups.
Okay. Since we're at the topic of funding already, which is what I was trying to do, we have a number of early stage investors here, and I think the audience is also very curious about some of these questions. For example, assuming we're talking about early stage funding, because I think that's much more relevant right now, what options are available to startup founders? I hope everybody can contribute. Maybe let's start with Earl.
Hello. So really quickly, Idea Space has actually several programs. One is our kind of really a structured program. So we kind of a call for application each year. So it's actually starting in October in like 3 or 4 weeks. And then we give them kind of really 6 months, what we call as an incubation kind of period, right? Literally we try to find prototypes and then try to scale them up to actually market validation or a pilot customer. We give $500,000. We pay for probably close, if not more than $1 million pesos of services. We have a lawyer, we have an accountant, we have IP, we pay for all your IP needs. Obviously, you have the office space, we have housing if you're not from Metro Manila. So all these things, and then we can do a follow-on round up to 5 million pesos for each company. So that's really what we do. We can do some exceptions to the rule if you already kind of self-incubated yourself, right? But then we really have to look, do you have some sort of real market traction that actually pays you, right? And then we can talk after for that larger amount.
Okay, for Seed Asia, we actually connect investors with tech startups to invest in them. We focus on apps, hardware, software, lean asset technology, innovation. We have like a growing network of angels, and we offer an opportunity to actually co-invest with professional investors, and for VCs as well to co-invest with this group of investors. So we raise 20,000 to 1.5 million US dollars for tech startups. So
I want to come at your question a different way, and this is for startups. First of all, I don't think that seeking outside funding is the first thing you need to do. I think you have to remember, and then I say this frequently, the best kind of funding is funding from a paying customer. And if you can bootstrap and you can get enough customers to cover your cost without giving out any equity in your company, without taking on any debt, by all means, that is the best kind of funding that there is. Now, that doesn't work for everybody, and I accept that there are a number of startups that will need some funding to get them from prototype stage to actual commercial monetization. So Kickstart, I liked Jojo's list because you do start with family, friends, angels. Kickstart, typically, we are usually the first institutional investor that a first-time startup gets to. So we will invest, whether it's seed up to Series A. And the reason for that is we believe that there is a need in the Philippines for seed investment to get people going. There's a need in the Philippines for follow-on funding because usually the first round of funding will require second investment in order to help them scale. We're happy to do Series A as well if that's the need. Because these elements are not present in the Philippine startup ecosystem, are not prominent in the Philippine startup ecosystem, then we're happy to be multi-stage until such time that the ecosystem evolves and that there are more specialized investment firms. Kickstart, so we have a launch garage program together with Jay, and that's a typical thing, $30,000 in cash for 15% equity in the company, and we provide mentoring, we allow people to use our facilities, we offer market access. A number of our startups will do deals directly with affiliate companies. Going forward, the typical Kickstart investment actually for slightly more evolved startup teams, that's typically will give $100,000, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what the startup needs. So that kind of, those are the checks that we have cut, probably in the range of up to 150,000, more or less.
I'd like to ask this question and maybe get a quick answer before I move on to some questions I'd like to ask Ron. But what types of, how much equity do you normally take when you make an investment? Minette, Beryl, and Earl. Just quick.
Maximum for us is 20% equity. Most of them, 15%. The reason for that is we want people to have skin in the game. It doesn't serve their purpose because they become uninvestable if somebody takes on a huge chunk at too early a stage.
Oh, Beryl.
Yeah, for us it's actually average also 20%. That guarantees us a board seat when we form the company. In the Philippines, when you incorporate, you need 5 board seats. So we want to make sure we have one early on.
Yeah, for Seed Asia, it really depends on the valuation. So, yeah, so it really depends on the valuation. We usually issue convertible debt.
What's your maximum equity?
Probably 20%.
20?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much the rule of thumb, I think. And I think that's what everybody's been doing, even in succeeding stages, to bite sizes of 20%, 20%. Ron, you've been helping out BOE with the World Startup Report by focusing on the Philippines. And coming from your background, you've seen the Israeli startup experience, the Valley. In that context, how do you see the maturity of the startups locally, and vis-a-vis the ability to raise funds? Are we mostly early stage, or is there hope in the near future for Series A and then maybe an exit?
Wow. So I don't want to spoil too much for my talk tomorrow, but so let's decompose the question back. The first element you said, because there are quite a bit of elements, but I mean, how do I see this ecosystem vis-a-vis other ecosystems? I mean, there's good and bad news, right? So good news, tons and tons and tons of opportunities everywhere you look, right? Bad news, ecosystem, immature, funding almost doesn't exist. Lots and lots and lots of challenges, right? So if you can figure out how to get past those challenges, you'll be doing very, very well. There are not a lot of teams here with great execution experience. So if you're a team with execution experience, leverage that to your advantage. If you're a team without execution experience, go back to the first question in this panel and surround yourself with amazing advisors. It's the best thing you could do for yourself to be competitive. On the funding side, you can just assume that there is not going to be any funding beyond seed stage. How many people, I mean, this is a startup conference, how many people in the audience are going to be deploying more than $10 million in investment next year in the Philippines, in Asia? Silence. No, is there a hand in the back?
Do you know what to do with
Is that
$10
Paco,
million?
or- Yeah. Anyways, you get the point. There is no money here. Unless you figure out quickly how to make money from your startup, you're going to be in the dead pool exactly when your seed money runs out. So focus on models that can monetize and early. That's really, really important.
Christina, do you think that the community in the Valley is ignoring the Philippine startup ecosystem in that regard? The funding, are we on the radar? I know that the easy answer is no, we're not on anybody's radar.
Well, it's yes and no. It's relative. Are we on the radar? The fact that some Filipino companies made it to the Valley. You've got Caliber that went, was at Y Combinator. You had Twit Music. You had a number of companies that actually successfully were present in the Valley. So I think that bodes well. That increases awareness that there are things that are happening here that are causing members in the Valley to take another look. It doesn't, and it's just a start. So for me, that's good news. We hosted PageSnap and Shoot and Sell. They were two of Angel Hack winners. PageSnap is here today. They made it to TechCrunch's Global Hack Day. Shoot and Sell, 3 Filipina team and 1 Singaporean, 1 Angel Hack Singapore, yet they were Filipino. They may not have won the contest, but the fact that they actually made it to the Valley, they won this competition, there's an increasing awareness that there are talents and skills here. And as the panelists shared earlier, it's all about execution. You may have the creative talent, you may have some of the technical talents, but you've got to mold that together and create a very viable and unique business that makes it interesting to those who are going to invest. Because at the end of the day, your investors are investing in you to make money. They're not investing because they think, oh, you're great, you're sexy. They want a 3x, 5x, 10x on the money they put into the company. And that's what I tell my clients. I said, doesn't matter how great your technology is, doesn't matter how smart you are, if you're not going to make money, no one's going to be interested. So you've got to have something there that will at least inspire and spark their interest because you're doing something right.
I mean, one more thing on that is, if you're a startup, right? If you're sitting at one of the tables and you have a company, actually it doesn't matter how evolved the ecosystem is. Like, nothing really matters except what you are doing, right? So just stick to your guns, execute. If what you're doing is valuable and you can build a business around it, money will find you, engineers will find you, you'll find a way to do well. There's tons of examples from all around the world of companies rising out of non-existent ecosystems and being hugely successful. So.
Yeah, I hope this gentleman won't mind. While I was in the restroom a while ago, I overheard this guy. He's American, okay? And he was chatting with somebody else, and he said, I'm here hanging around, because US is not really doing well, and I'm looking at other opportunities outside of the US, and this country is doing well, So we've, a while ago we heard, 7% growth per quarter. So that's really great. So I think the message here is, if we focus on doing the right things here locally, it's automatic. People will come to us. The engineers will come to us. Managers will come to us. Money will come to us. With mentors, we need mentors here. Earl, Earl was telling me, was it yesterday or today? Or it was today because you just arrived today. He told me, what I've discovered is that managers in technology in Silicon Valley, they work for zero money. They're risk takers and they will take equity instead. Okay, that's going to be a challenging pitch for us here in the Philippines. But what I'm saying is, these people in the US, I bet if you have a company here that you grow to $10 million, for example, in revenue, And now, if you go global or even regional, you can reach $200 million or $100 million. But you need a manager. You don't find it here. I bet this manager in the US will come over here and say, yeah, let me be your CEO, or let me be your chief business development person. And I'll take equity instead of a big paycheck. So that's why it's important. Which begs the question also. Do we have these good startups today? A while ago also, Paul Santos was asking me, if I have $2 million, Jojo, that I can invest today, is there someone that will deserve receiving it here in the Philippines? Probably the answer is no. We're not there yet. So we really need to, step up in this regard. And we're hoping that the startups of Minette and Earl, they get to this condition where they're investable, so that Paul will write his $2 million check.
So actually,
Where's Paul?
Yeah, sorry, Jojo. It's interesting because I just came back actually 2 days ago from Silicon Valley. I was there for 2.5 weeks talking to VCs, talking about how we should fund Philippine startups. And they said one simple thing: if your startups make money, they will attract money, right? So if they actually prove local traction, they actually make hundreds of thousands of dollars, they will actually be more attractive to somebody if they want to go abroad, right? Actually, interesting enough, yeah, right? It makes sense because you don't want to build just projects. You want to build businesses that generate revenue, right? Right? That's why you're doing a business. One last comment, actually, Dror, who's my classmate, who used to work with Ron, we're in the same class with Eric Schmidt and Peter Wendell, taught us venture capital. And they said there's only one rule of investment. When greed overcomes fear, investors will give you money. So just think about that. Will someone's greed overcome their fear giving you money? Can you cross that threshold? Right? So be honest with yourself and ask that.
That's cool. It's very interesting that the whole concept of importing talent at the early stage is actually a viable thing. It's something that we should actually look at. We were talking about that last week. If we can't find it locally, let's bring in some guys from abroad first, just to seed bring it up, so bring up the benchmark. But that and exposure to VCs and investors in abroad, whether it's Silicon Valley or Europe or wherever, requires exactly that, exposure. And I know that MON, the DOST has been, and the government, even DTI and all that, has been trying to project ourselves, our startups in pavilions, technology pavilions. What can we see? What else can we see looking towards the future from the government to help out the local startups get exposed in that way, in big scale?
The last 3 years, probably 4 years, we've actually focused our mission to places like Tokyo, in Sydney, Singapore. We've been doing that for the last 10 years, as well as in the US, okay? But it was only about 2 years ago that we've actually invited startups to join the missions, because before it was more focused on the BPO companies, marketing their services abroad, okay? This year, the ones we had in Tokyo, Sydney, and Communication in Singapore, half of the companies that joined the mission were actually startups. So we even have startups from places like Naga City joining us in some of these missions. we're looking at a couple of missions to overseas, well, together with the Board of Investments in Europe this time, as well as probably a couple more in the U.S. For some of the healthcare, oriented startups that we have in the Philippines. So we hope to actually we're looking to actually fund some of these missions outside of the traditional countries that we've been doing this.
May I make one comment? So, as we mentioned earlier, Stack Silicon Valley, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, conducts the on-3 pitch competition, but we do it in collaboration with DOST, DTI, and DFA. That's the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Foreign Affairs, and Department of Trade and Industry. And I have to say, we've been working with the San Francisco offices of DFA and DTI, and they've been very prolific, actively engaged in increasing awareness of all the activity that is here, from companies that are part of the priority projects to the startups. And so you've got a lot of cross-border support. That's one of the things that we also felt was important. The cross-border platform, the grand prize of the 3-month immersion at Plug and Play, that's there so that we can actually immerse and expose a lot of these startups to what we talk about, or what some of the mentors talk about when they're here: competition, how things are done in the Valley. So I wanted to share that in terms of how the government has played a role in the ecosystem that is formed today, because without this collaboration, and it really is a collaboration, it's a collaboration and it's a cross-border collaboration, which is, I think, very unique to the Philippines. I just wanted to highlight that, because when I share our story with the Ukrainians, with the Russians, with the South Americans who've all come to me asking, so what are you doing there? They say it's pretty unique and they don't have that cross-border platform set up. So I just wanted to do a call out and recognize that the government has actually become much more engaged in helping to increase awareness of the startups in the Philippines.
I just want to quickly pick up on the point of cross-border collaboration. For the startups that are out there, there will be bridges. They will be built. Kickstart has a partnership with Plug and Play Tech Center. We promise that anybody who does need it appropriately, if we've got an investment in them, we will take them to Silicon Valley. They will be there for 3 months, participate in the program, immerse themselves in the network. We have an arrangement with Singtel as well, so that if there are any startups that go to any of our partner countries, whether that's Australia, Singapore, etc., they can at least crash in the incubator spaces. And if there are investments that need to be made up to a Series A, Singtel says that they would be willing to consider matching any investment that Kickstart makes. So I think there will be bridges, both the financial ones as well as the physical ones. But again, as Jojo said earlier, we've got to get the startups there. And I think we get them there by collaborating.
Check. Hey, there is a question from the audience. Oh, I'm here. So this is for those who have funds or manage funds to invest in startups. What are the prerequisites you expect startups to have before you would consider them ready for investment? So kind of just like a summary, maybe you can just like take off your bullet point, your responses.
Well, it depends on the stage, no? If you don't have a product yet, it's the idea and the founders, no? You look at the founder or the founders, it's better, and say, what is the problem? Is it real? Is it big? What is your solution? Can you build that solution? And can you guys build the solution, not somebody else? Okay? So maybe you get funding, and you can raise that funds again with contests, with grants, with your family, friends, okay? You build a prototype, so you have a working product. Then you can approach Minette and Earl and tell them, I need more muscle here, so I need $30,000 or 500,000 pesos, so I can get more people on board and get the product productized, okay? Then you get the product after 3 to 6 months, if you're in the ICT world. And then people are going to be asking, after that, then they will say, okay, is the product working? Do you have market traction? Someone buying it? How much do you produce it? Do you make money in the process? So there's a business model, etc., etc. Now, you need $200,000 now to actually get out of the incubator and work, from your garage, work now in your in an office, so you can hire more people. So that's a long answer, but it depends on what stage you are in. We can take it offline later because we're running out of time.
What he said.
But while we're on the topic of how government can contribute, we've discussed this morning, and we can take it again offline. We have a meeting tomorrow for lunch, so I announce it to that you'll be there. Pressure. But we have ideas on how we can really make this, how we can move the needle even further. Okay? Now that this ecosystem is already existing and parts of it are already existing, we just, right now, if you say, why do we have only 2 VCs? Why 2 accelerators? It's because there's only little of you. I get asked this question all the time. How many startups do we produce per year? And I say, seriously, maybe 30, 40 only a year. That's just not enough. So we need to move that needle. And in our experience, when we see it in other countries, especially in the United States, a lot of the startups come from universities. So we brought an idea to Mon, saying, listen, if we have a program that will identify 50 universities in the country that will produce 100 startup ideas, out of those 100 times 500 is 5,000. Tama, di ba? Tama ba yung math ko? 5,000 ideas. From those 5,000 ideas, you get to 500 that are investable at the seed angel level. Pwede magpasok sila mo ng pera. No? And then these companies will be incubated in the TBIs. Okay? After that 500,000 pesos or 300,000 pesos, for example, that they receive, then they can graduate to Earl and Minette. So, because, Earl and Minette don't need to go to the, time's up. No, anyway, so that's one idea, no? That, if we can have a program that will produce 5,000 ideas to make 500 investable companies per year, that's a big step from 50 or from 30, which we have today. Second is, how do we bring, because we need to start importing really good managers. We don't have them here yet, okay? But we can develop them. And what we need to do is like what PBA does. PBA pa ba ngayon? Di ba, in our basketball, we grew up with this, Yeah, we need imports. No, so if we can have like Chile import startups to establish themselves here, then we can bring in imported managers to teach us also better startup management. Sorry.
That note.
Oh, and in closing, there is a women's breakfast tomorrow morning. Sign up and register. I think 50 slots. I'm not sure if they're full. We have 3 women here represented on the panel, so that's pretty exciting. If you're a woman, sign up. Don't pretend to be a woman.
I'll be there.
We'll be
tomorrow morning.
I just want to quote Mon. He just claimed to be a woman. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, it's a great event tomorrow morning. Thank you, panel. We'd
Great.
like to
Thank
call
you.
up Tina Amper to present certificates. Thank you all. If you already received a certificate, panelists, we're not giving you a second one.
Photo up, come on.
I got this feeling on the summer day when you were gone. I crashed my car into the bridge. I watched, I let it burn. I threw your shit into a bag
speakers. Jojo, I think we're gonna give you a prime location under the umbrella there. You can just recline and just keep chatting all day. Thanks for all the insights. It's great.
All right, Dave, where is that fish bowl?
The fish bowl. It's here.
Did you know a while ago we were looking at the trending topics in the Philippines and trending topics, and we actually saw hashtag go up on number 1.
Wow. That's above Janet Napoles.
Yeah, then we refreshed it and we got overtaken by hashtag Throwback Thursday and Janet Napoles, which
Come
is
on,
not
guys.
very good.
Come on.
So guys, get the groove back on, okay?
Yeah, let's get it back going.
On that note, we do have a contest sponsored by Lenovo, and the person with the most tweets with the hashtag GoAb will win a prize. I
Wow.
repeat, the person with the most tweets with hashtag GoAb will win the prize.
Okay.
And then also, the wackiest GoAb pic wearing the t-shirt, the GoAb t-shirt. If you take a selfie or you ask somebody else to take a photo of you in a you're doing some wacky thing. Make sure it's not dangerous, just wacky, okay? You could win a prize.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's draw. Do you guys want to win some prizes?
What do we have here? We have some caps.
Oh, yeah.
Is this caps?
That's nice.
All right. What are these?
I don't know.
What are these? What? These are bags?
Oh, bags. Let's open them. Look at these.
Those are bags.
Aren't these
Oh, it's a
lovely?
leather bag. Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's the one thing that I don't like being an organizer.
I know.
I never get to win any of these cool things.
We don't get any of the swag.
All right, so let's do this.
Okay.
All right, the first person to get a smart bag that one Dave is holding right now, I want you to rush on stage, Mr. Melvin Ninal. Let's do this quickly.
Woo! Come on down. Claim your
I'm gonna
prize.
draw 5. Next person to win one is Abbas Ali.
Woo! All right. There you go.
Woo!
Thanks. Congrats.
Next one up is Anna F. Gervas Hero. Did I get that right?
Congratulations.
Number 4, we have Eddie Ibanez.
Eddie, woo!
One more, we'll have
One more. Thanks, man.
Paul Jalsita. Woo, Paul, Mr. Paul, where are you? One more.
Paul?
Should we get back?
If you're not present, we're gonna give it away. She wants one?
Represented by his
Yeah,
wife.
his
Okay,
wife.
come right on.
Close
Come on.
enough.
I need a valid ID.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay, sure.
Thank you so much. For Mr. Paul.
All right.
And we have one more. Let's give out one more.
Okay.
Mr. or Miss Riel Ligoid. Ligoid.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
I'm really
Mr.
sorry.
Riel Ligoid. Ligoid. Lieguid. Are you here? Are you here?
No.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sorry, I'll put you back. Maybe you can win tomorrow. But no bag today. All right, we have Ivana Guevara.
That's over 2.
Probably in the beach. All right, one last. Okay, one last, man. And we have... She's
Wait,
here?
She's here?
Oh
There
my
she
gosh,
is.
I put her name back
Oh,
in
wow,
there.
yes. Fabulous.
Ivana Guevara. You just won a smart bag. You're welcome.
Now wait, before
Think
you go,
smart.
I believe you might have the youngest geek here, right? The youngest geek here. Your
All right, we're
nephew,
giving a lot more
Thomas.
bags than we expected. I just got told to give more bags away.
Okay, keep giving them away then.
All right, so you draw it this time.
Okay.
All right, another winner of a smart bag, cool backpack. I will demo it right here.
Ramon Pastor.
Ramon, run up.
Ramon. No, not here.
Woo!
Eleuterio Milan Jr.
This feels good. Anybody else winning? What's this?
Eleuterio Milan Jr. Oh man, we are striking out.
Just put them on the side so they can put them back. All right.
Christine Gallevo. Christine Gallevo. Yes, finally.
Come on, quickly. And the next one is Benji Bicaldo. Benji, where are you?
And Lonel Labit. Lonel Labit. Lonel, are you here?
Benji, where's Benji? Benji's not here.
Sherwin Sunil Gope.
Say that again. Sherwin.
Are you here? Sherwin Gope.
Come on, run
Yes,
up quickly, man.
Come on down.
Come on, guys, be happy for him, even if you're secretly envious. Come on. Woohoo! What? All right. And then last, Mr. or Miss Johan Sten or Johan Sten. Anybody here? Johan? Mr. Sten? All right, that's it. Woo! Okay, that's the last one we will give for now, and five more. All right, so we're done giving away. So if your friends are not here and they won, you should tell them that they won, but they lost their chance, so they should always be here.
That's right.
And if you have friends who are not here, they might not get a chance to win, so call them back and say, come on, win some bags.
All right. So it is now one of my favorite times of day. Snack time or merienda. So guys, hit the snacks, get your coffee, take about a 10 to 15 minute break, network with some people, relax, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Thanks.
Up next is our panel. Our fourth panel, which is Startup Best Practices and Philippine Startup Success Stories. So we'll be hearing startup success stories. We'll see you in 15 minutes. Hit the music, please. Thank you.
You're supposed to be, baby. Right here, right now, that's where you belong. This one is there is no other to do you like me, baby. No other loves you like me. Oh, girl, you can search the world and find love, because my love, baby, is your love. I bet no one can treat you like me. To my heart, but you, baby. You love me, I tell you, baby, drive me crazy. It's no if not, but me, I tell you, it's no maybe. Everything you know, you do, it fascinates me. In my heart, I think about you one way only. Yes, I'm coming home and I'm coming shortly. There's nothing in this street to entertain me, because I told my